Welcome, welcome. Big night tonight. I'm telling you, I got so much on my mind when we get started at 8 o'clock. It's nutbaggish. Hopefully you already know what we're talking about, but and hopefully you've had a chance to look at a little bit of the original post that I'm going to be talking about. But I'll cover all that in about 8 minutes. But holy crap, today is huge. I mean, my head is swimming. I can't even wait to dive into this. But we're going to give it about 8 minutes for the room to fill up. This is going to be, I think, a monumental discussion. So buckle in. Don't leave because you may not get back into the room if there's some kind of reason we get a community violation. I don't think we're going to. I've been very careful, but yeah, this is enormous. I can't understate how crazy today's live is going to be. It's sad in a way that there's not going to be more people who are going to participate in it. This is nuts. I will probably do a deep dive about this later as well because it's absolutely nuts today. Woo! I cannot tell you how crazy the news is. Wow. We'll get into it. We'll get into it heavy in about 7 minutes. But I literally cannot overstate how big this news is today and how many talking points this has. So we probably will be at it for a while. But if you can't see it, by the way, if you can't stay, we will post this. I will post this 2 hours after the live is done. About 2 hours after live is done on my YouTube channel. Also, that YouTube channel is always linked directly on our front page of our website, devilsadvocates.info. So if you can't stay and you want to know what it was that I talked about that I thought was such a big deal, you can watch it recorded after we're done tonight. Again, I want to remind you that if for some reason we get a community violation of some kind, oftentimes what will happen is they'll just stop advertising it and people won't be able to find it and get into it. So only the people who are here are going to be able to stay. So if you're even remotely interested in the big, huge news discussion, I recommend you don't surf away and come back later because you may not be able to come back later. Just fair warning. So, like I said, buckle up to stay a little bit because if you want to hear this discussion, and I hope that you will, but I understand if you don't. Thank you. I did get my hair cut today. Wow, you're observant. Yeah, thank you. That's hilarious. I was telling my wife today, I was like, man, my hair's getting a little long. And crazy thing around where I live is I actually have to travel a ways to go get my hair cut. Yeah, this is nuts. This is This is nuts. I almost am like a little trembly. I'm so like, I can't believe what just happened. I literally cannot believe what just happened. So 5 minutes, we'll get into that. But as I will say again, it does answer the question everybody's been asking. Why don't we have any body cam footage of the arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania of Luigi Mangione? We now know why we don't have that video, in my opinion. We now know why we haven't seen that video. And we're going to get into that pretty heavy here. So yeah, I'm going to try to pocket the nerves a little bit. Like, I wouldn't say nerves, but I just like, it was such a huge shocker when I saw it. And it sucks because I have done everything I can to go to the Pennsylvania court docket. I found Luigi's court docket. I found proof that Thomas Dickey submitted this paperwork today. So it was just filed today, but it's not available for me to find. I suspect that Dave Betris, for example, has access to records that I don't. So maybe that's why. I did not get to find the document. I only got to find verification that indeed Thomas Dickey filed this omnibus pretrial hearing for a relief. He did file that today. So I know he did file it today. I confirmed that 100% true. I have no reason to believe Dave Betris didn't actually read from the actual document itself. I just can't see the document. And that may be because Dave Betris is an attorney and has access to the files and maybe has more access than I do. I do not have access to anything but public record, and it doesn't look like it's 100% public record yet. What does what mean? What is cautious up the omnibus for pretrial hearing for relief? I will explain that in about 4 minutes. Yeah, that's what I'm going to explain in about 4 minutes. I just want to, 3 minutes. I just want to wait till the top of the hour because I scheduled it for 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So when we get to the top of the hour, I will explain what the motion is to the best of my understanding. I am not a lawyer, but I do understand a bit, and I have Google Foo, so I looked into what it is and what the purpose is, and we will discuss that in detail. But it's huge, enormous, like huge. And I think it was hinted to by Karen Agnifilo in the last press conference that she gave on February 21st, when she said that we have reason to believe that the search and seizure was illegal. She hinted that they have reason to believe. Here's the reason. I guarantee you Karen Agnifilo was in touch with Thomas Dickey and knew what he was going to file. She just couldn't probably say it ahead of time. So when he filed the paperwork, this is what I think Karen Agnifilo was saying. We have reason to believe that Luigi Mangione's rights were violated in the arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania. And the big question we have to ask is, how does that filter down the row? If he wasn't arrested in Altoona, Pennsylvania, then how was he extradited to New York? And so on and so on. So everything is now in trouble. Now, I'm a pessimist, so I believe that the government's never going to let him go, but they've got some major problems. It also explains to me why we're having a delay in the discovery and why we're having a delay in the dates, because they got to find another way to keep him under wraps, because they're fucked. They pardon my French. They are in trouble. They're in big trouble, and I think they're reeling now, trying to figure out how they can avoid letting him go. The domino effect is really going to be interesting. Because if they didn't have a right to arrest him, then they didn't have a right to see his items. If they didn't see his items, then they have no reason for New York to come in and sweep him up and extradite him. The whole thing falls out if they didn't legally obtain the information. It's crazy. So this explains, in my opinion, a lot. And again, I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm tense. I'm pensive. I want to do a fair job of this. I realize that this is gonna bring a lot of hard questions. I gotta hold back for like 60 more seconds. Let's get to the top of the hour, and then I will go into my diatribe. Get out the popcorn. Yeah, no shit. This is huge. And they gave the Altoona arresting officers awards. I hope you don't forget that part. I hope you stay to the end and you don't forget that part, because it's not in my notes. But that's a hilarious point to this whole thing. When you hear what they did to Luigi Mangione, to think that they stood up and gave the officers awards for that. Woo! And I don't even have that in my notes. But it's funny to mention. All right. It is now 6 o'clock. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me on the live tonight. There was enormous news that was released in a TikTok video that I saw from an attorney that a lot of us who follow the Luigi Mangione case follow, David Betris. His account on TikTok, by the way, his main personal account, has been shut off. As far as I understand, it's still under investigation. He is still unaware, as far as I know, of why his account was suspended. Dave Betris is not a believer in if Luigi did what they say he did, that's okay. He's not a believer in vigilante justice. Dave Betris is a lawyer. He's an attorney, and he's very, very good at explaining the facts in law to those who are following the Luigi case. And Dave Betris himself is interested in the Luigi case and has questions about the Luigi case, but he's not really biased. Like, he's not for Luigi. He's just saying, look, you guys are all following this case. I understand your interest in this case, and so I'm going to try to help you as a lawyer understand. And Dave Betris, by the way, goes on television stations. I think he's been on CNN. I know he goes on in a morning, like a weekly show on a radio station or TV station, not the radio station, a TV station somewhere where he's at. He did a video of him walking through the television thing. He's been on multiple TV stations. He's well-respected attorney. So the reason why I'm telling you all these things about Dave Betris, thanks for the haircut thing. You're the second person to mention that. The reason I'm telling you all this is not Joe Blow searching clout. In fact, his second account has very low followers, poor guy. But he's got another law office account and so on. I wish I could get Dave Betris to come in here himself. I've asked him before in the past, and he gave me a few minutes of his time on texting, but I'm not sure he wants to associate with me entirely, because maybe I'm a little too pro Luigi, or a little too friendly to make him comfortable, or maybe he's just freaking too busy. I mean, he's a full-time attorney and does TikToks and does lives, right? let's get into the discussion of what happened. So Dave Betris pointed out that Thomas Dickey has filed an omnibus pretrial hearing of relief, of which part of it basically is talking about the desire to suppress evidence because Luigi Mangione's rights were violated at his arrest. And I don't think that you can overstate what happened. I took notes and wrote down word for word exactly what Dave Betris's highlights were. I think it took him almost full 10 minutes to do it. I also took those notes down. I want to give basically the rundown of what he stated, as well as my interjection of thoughts on it as well. So, this omnibus pretrial hearing basically is designed to basically be considered by the courts before the trial begins to make sure that the trial should even happen. It's basically an attempt by the defense to say, you don't have probable cause to go to trial on this. You've got problems. And in particular, the arrest was illegal and the items that were obtained were illegal. And I believe it also has a domino effect, because if it's true, it has to be upheld. Of course, this is just a request to say, hey, what happened to Luigi Mangione is totally a violation of the Fourth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, Pennsylvania Constitution. All kinds of laws were broken in Luigi's arrest, and it's a violation of his rights. And if that's the case, then everything they found in his possession, on his backpack, all of that then can't be used for New York to extradite him to New York for charges there, which I think may lead to the reason why we have a delay in the federal case, is they got to find another way to justify having Luigi Mangione in custody, because this way is under major problems. This is what Karen Agnifilo basically hinted at when she said, we have reason to believe that the arrest in Altoona was illegal, or that his property was searched illegally. Let's get into the details. According to the second part, it says, Dave Betris said, according to the second part of this motion to suppress, was about the arrest on December 9th in 2024 in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Two officers arrived in Altoona, Pennsylvania at the McDonald's where Luigi Mangione was at. Officers Detweiler and Fry. We know a lot of this stuff. Detweiler and Fry approached Luigi with their badges and uniforms, identifying themselves as police officers. So it was very clear from the very beginning that who was coming up to him. There was police officers in uniform with badges coming up to Luigi Mangione. Luigi was seated in the corner of the McDonald's with a wall to his back and a wall to his left, I believe they said, or Dave said. There was also an unoccupied chair beside him. The officers immediately positioned themselves to the right of Luigi Mangione within arm's reach of him. The actions of the officers, according to Thomas Dickey, were designed to curtail and restrain Luigi's right and ability to leave his seat. In other words, the two officers pinned him into the corner. They pinned him into the corner and stood there blocking his way to exit the seat. So already, by reasonable standards, Luigi Mangione is being detained by the positioning of the officers in a way that he's basically pinned into a corner behind his table or whatever, and the officers are pinning him against the wall. There was no explanation given to Luigi about why they were approaching him or why they were blocking his path. At first, police indicated that he looked suspicious and had overstayed his welcome at McDonald's. It should be pointed out, or was pointed out by David Betris and Thomas Dickey, that Luigi Mangione was a paying customer of McDonald's and had been there for approximately 30 minutes. But according to the officers, that 30 minutes was he had worn out his welcome at McDonald's. He had been there too long. He was loitering for spending 30 minutes eating his breakfast. That was the reason why you look suspicious and you're no longer welcome in McDonald's because you've been here for too long for 30 minutes. Was basically the pretext of that approach. Okay. Now, it does lead up to some interesting questions that we can ask at the end about the whole, does any business have the right to refuse service to anyone? So if McDonald's decides that they're done with you and you're not welcome in their place, can they just tell you you're not welcome and then have the police remove you? That's a whole nother issue. We can get into that later, but I would ask you, if that's the case, then what if you're not welcome in there because of the color of your skin? What if you're not welcome in there because they don't like the way you look? So at what point do you have the right to stay there? And what point do they have the right to say, well, we can refuse service to anybody, so we're going to call the police and say, hey, he's been here for a half hour. We don't like this guy's look. Let's kick him out. Police indicated that he looked suspicious and had overstayed his welcome. Luigi had, like I said, had been there for approximately 30 minutes. Dickey argues that Luigi is at this point being detained for suspicion of something that he's not being informed of. Again, his attorney, Thomas Dickey in Pennsylvania, is indicating that already Luigi is being detained because the officers are blocking his path and giving no indication that he's free to leave. Fry and Detweiler then created a human wall, curtailing Luigi's freedom and liberty. At no time did the officers indicate to Luigi that he was free to leave, nor did they give reasons for why he was being detained, other than he looked suspicious and had outstayed his welcome. They did not tell him that he had. Let's see. So they immediately began to issue demands. It says Officer Detweiler immediately began to issue demands and instructions to Luigi, including asking or demanding that Luigi put his hands on top of his head. I want to point that out. No reasonable person would believe that if officers who are uniformed pinning you in the corner and blocking your exit and telling you to put your hands on the head have not placed you under arrest. But he's not. He's not. The officers will tell you clearly he was not placed under arrest for quite a while after this. But they're just ordering him to answer their questions, ordering him to put his hands on top of his head. But they will maintain, the officers, that at no point was Luigi under arrest at this point, and it implied he was free to leave, even though they're blocking his path and they're demanding him to comply with their orders, including putting his hands on top of his head. This means Luigi was seized and unlawfully detained with no implied ability to refuse the officer's demand. This was according to Thomas Dickey. Essentially, he is in custody of the Altoona Police Department before having been read his rights or placed under arrest. Luigi Mangione did not have his Miranda rights read to him. He was not technically under arrest. He was just being detained, but it is an illegal detention, according to Thomas Dickey. The officers cannot illegally detain. Remember this, most of you have seen when an officer comes up to you and you aren't yet guilty of something, they'll say this: "Can I speak to you for a moment?" They'll ask, "Can I speak to you for a moment?" You have the right to say, "Nah, man, I don't think so. I don't want to talk to you." And you can leave. You are free to leave. In fact, you will also see many times people will ask, "Am I being detained?" "No, you're not being detained." "Okay, then I think I'll leave." Okay. At no time did the officers do any of that. At no time did the officers ask Luigi Mangione if they could speak to him. At no time was it implied that he had any ability to leave. He was literally pinned into the corner, and he was given demands, including put your hand on top of your head. Put your hands on top of your head. That is all detention. On anyone's book, that is detention. So this is a violation of the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Pennsylvania. This is what Dave Betchers pointed out. The two officers continued to interrogate Mr. Luigi Mangione without reading him his rights as required by both the Pennsylvania and the U.S. Constitution. So now an interrogation is going on. They're asking him questions without telling him he has the right to remain silent. This is a problem. They're demanding he answer questions without telling him he has the right to remain silent because he's not being detained, while they pin him in the corner and order him to put his hands on top of his head. At no time did Luigi show any threatening gesture or show of force. However, despite the fact that Luigi showed no threatening gestures or show of force, Officer Detweiler demanded that Luigi stand up and undergo a Terry frisk or a pat down. So now again, he's not being detained, but he's ordered to stand up, and they frisk him, but he's not being detained. No actions at that time were justified Luigi being frisked. This is basically the argument of Thomas Dickey, his attorney in Pennsylvania. The officers then took possession of his identification materials, presumably his driver's license, maybe also a passport, and did not give them back to him. This further implies that Luigi Mangione was not free to go. Because if he was free to go, you need to take your ID with you. They took his identification and did not give it back to him. That implies he is detained and not free to go. The officers took possession of his identification, did not give it back to him. Let's see, go to page 2. Detweiler then left McDonald's with Luigi Mangione's identification, left the building, while Officer Fry kept Luigi Mangione detained in the corner. So the officer now leaves the McDonald's with Luigi's identification out of sight of Luigi. Who knows what's happening to the identification? And Luigi Mangione is being effectively detained by Officer Fry in the corner of McDonald's, not being told that he has the right to leave, not being informed of his rights, not being informed that he has the right to remain silent and not answer their questions. They're demanding he do these things. Within minutes, other members of law enforcement begin to show up, both uniformed and ununiformed plainclothes detectives or whatever. Also, apparently the Pennsylvania Attorney General office, a member of the Attorney General's office shows up in the McDonald's while Luigi is still being detained and has not been read his Miranda rights. At this point, somewhere between 7 and 10 officers are forming a human wall around Luigi Mangione, pinning him in the corner, curtailing his ability to leave the corner. At no time is he being told he has the right to leave or that he's under arrest or that he's being detained. But any reasonable person would realize that when you have a wall of officers blocking your path and you have to push past, as this was saying here, at least 7 officers to get out of the corner, which, how would that have gone for Luigi? If Luigi had tried to force his way past the officers, how much ass kicking would he have got? Just ask yourself that question. Maybe you could, oh no, the officers would have let him go because he wasn't under arrest. He was free to leave. So if he would have pushed his way past officers, bullshit, that would have been called an assault. The officers were standing there making a wall. If Luigi pushed against them, they would say, oh, that man just fucking assaulted me. And he would have been on the ground and hammered. So no one's going to push a cop out of the way. So it's not true, in my opinion, that he was free to go. They continued to interrogate him for some time. I believe they said up to 15 minutes he was interrogated without having his Miranda rights read still. And again, no further explanations given for why he's being detained. Finally, after 15 minutes, he is told that he is under investigation, but still not read his Miranda rights. So 15 minutes go by, and they finally inform Luigi Mangione that the reason why he's not being detained is that he's under investigation. And they did not read his rights to him. Luigi was asked for his name, and this is where it gets funny, because Dave Betris now is terrified to say the name Luigi Mangione. So what Dave Betris said was, they asked him for his name, and he replied, Mark Rosario, you know what name I'm talking about. I don't believe he told them he was Mark Rosario. He had handed them an identification that said Mark Rosario, but at the time they asked him, what is your name? He said Luigi Mangione. It's just that Dave Betris is terrified to say Luigi Mangione's name because he's already had one of his accounts banned, and people keep telling him the reason you're getting banned is because you mentioned Luigi Mangione's name. So now every time Dave Betris talks about him, he calls him Mark Rosario and puts air quotes around it. I feel bad for Dave Betris. I understand why he's doing it. Obviously, it's not saying the name Luigi Mangione that's getting you banned, because I'm still here, at least for the moment. We'll see what happens. But the point being is that when Dave Betris said, they asked him for his name and he said Mark Rosario, that's not, I think, what he meant. He said Luigi Mangione because he adds, you know the name he said. Because he's afraid of saying Luigi Mangione. So it makes it a little bit more confusing for us. When we keep using all these cryptic language, it makes it harder for us to understand what's really happening. After 2 more minutes, so 15 minutes, he still hasn't been read his Miranda rights. After 15 minutes, he's informed that he's under investigation, but he's not under arrest, and he hasn't been read his Miranda rights. After 2 more minutes of interrogation, he has then read his rights. So that's at least 17 minutes now that Luigi Mangione is detained by law enforcement, asked to put his hands on top of his head. His items are taken from him and placed on the other side of a wall of police officers, separating him from his belongings. His items are illegally searched and seized, and all of this happens for 17 minutes before they say, you are now being detained and under arrest. And oh, by the way, you have some rights to not talk to us. It says further in that omnibus filing today, they told him that he was not in custody, which is, according to Thomas Dickey, materially false. They told him he was not in custody, which is materially false and contradictory to the facts that clearly show that he was in detention the entire time, being pinned in the corner by officers, demanded to comply to orders, stand, be frisked, hands on top of your head. All these things are happening, despite the fact that they tell him that he was not in custody. And that's materially false. It's clear that he was in custody. Then Luigi Mangione is given another pat down. 7 minutes later, he's removed and taken into custody for presenting false identification. At some time during all of this, they were searching his belongings. They found, well, that's not clear if they were searching in the office or whether they did it at the police station. I should say that. It says at some time they were searching his belongings and they found a clip wrapped in underwear, a separate package. Here's something that we don't hear a lot of, I haven't heard about. A separate package secured by duct tape, of which officers needed to use a knife to peel the duct tape off of the item to look inside the sealed package. So now not only are they searching his items without a warrant, but they're searching items within there that they have to use a knife to cut open to break the duct tape around an item to find a computer chip that was wrapped inside of a duct tape along with, I think, a clip with bullets in it. But they had to use a knife to cut the tape off this item and to illegally search without a warrant the items that were in that bag and inside that separate package wrapped in duct tape. I think that's a major problem. So there was a computer chip, there was bullets, there was and then they rewrapped the items. There was also a gun found, a suppressor found, a red notebook that they have dubbed a manifesto. Those are of the items listed. And that's basically the highlights where my notes end. So let's review before I start reading a lot of your comments. I would say many people keep asking the question, why haven't we seen the arrest? Why haven't we seen any body cam footage? I would argue this. You know why you didn't see it? Because it's illegal. It will become clear that Luigi Mangione is being detained for at least 15 minutes with no one reading him his rights, demanding that he comply, stand for searches, stand for pat downs, hands on top of your head, but you're not under arrest and you're not being read your rights. If that video came out, everyone would be having a major problem. And there would be lawyers who aren't even in Luigi's camp saying, you can't fucking do that. You can't, where did they read his rights? You can't do that. Anyone who saw that video is going to know that Luigi Mangione was detained. Now here's the big question you have to ask yourself. Oh yeah, and he also said the money was not his, correct? And in the review that Dave Betris gave, they didn't even mention the money. That money situation, by the way, in my opinion, from what I remember, and I could be wrong, that money situation didn't show up until New York City had him in possession, and then New York City brought charges against Luigi and suddenly added new things that were found in the backpack, including $8,000 in US cash and like $2,000 in foreign currency. To which Luigi Mangione said, I don't know where that came from. That has to be planted, something to that effect. And his attorney basically shut him down to basically say, you know, you shouldn't be talking about stuff. But the point being is that, yeah, the original report of what was in the bag, I don't believe included the money. The money didn't show up until the New York's, to the federal case presented evidence against Luigi and listed it among the things that were found. So there's all kinds of shenanigans, in my opinion. So now what you have is you have my analysis of what's happening in this case. Why haven't we seen the footage? We haven't seen the footage because it shows that Luigi Mangione was illegally detained. And this is the big question that you need to ask yourself. How do we feel as Americans? How do we feel if we think Luigi did it, but he was not read his rights? Technically, that's enough to throw the whole thing out. If you were not read your Miranda rights and you were not told that you have the right to remain silent, even though everyone in America supposedly knows you have the right to remain silent, if you are not informed of your Miranda rights, the arrest is invalid. If the arrest is invalid, the search and seizure of his property is invalid. If the search and seizure of his property is invalid, his extradition to New York is invalid. Everything is gone. Everything is gone. Now here's the problem. There's no way in hell the government is going to let go of Luigi Mangione. He is going to face trial. They don't give a flip that it was done illegally, if it was done illegally. Now, granted, let's keep in mind, this is what his attorney is saying happened. We don't get to see the video for ourselves, but I'm assured myself that Thomas Dickey has seen the video, that he can back up what he's saying, that this is all verifiable. So we have to, at this moment, take Thomas Dickey's word that that's exactly how it went down in Altoona, Pennsylvania. That Luigi was effectively detained and a violation of his U.S. constitutional rights, 4th Amendment, 14th Amendment, and I think it was Article 1, Section 8 of the Pennsylvania Constitution. Huge violations. So again, we have to ask ourselves, how do we feel about Americans if Luigi Mangione really did it, but to prove that they did it, they illegally arrested him? Do you feel okay letting somebody guilty walk because of a technicality, because they violated his law? Then it becomes a question of, do you believe in the American justice system, and do you believe that you have to do things legally? Do you have to arrest people legally? And that's if he did it. Because I have to point out, if law enforcement's going to take his ID out of his possession, out of his view, and do whatever the hell they want to do with it, if they're going to all of a sudden show up with money in New York that wasn't listed in the original thing, then how do we know what evidence was found on him because they needed it to be on him to extradite him to New York? Let me see. I missed a comment, and it sounds like I need to look at that one. So, yeah, so these are the questions we have to ask ourselves. I feel like I'm done at the moment with my rant, and I'm trying to read your comments to see what you feel about it. But the gist of what we're saying is this. Thomas Dickey, the attorney representing, and by the way, in the court docket that I read, the things that I could see open to the public in the court document was several points at which Thomas Dickey filed some kind of mention that Luigi Mangione is being prevented from appearing in Pennsylvania. So there was dates that Luigi Mangione is supposed to appear or whatever, and he cannot because the federal government has Luigi Mangione in custody and is not allowing Luigi Mangione to travel to Pennsylvania for things. So there has been things on the docket that list Luigi Mangione was prevented from appearing. My theory, and I can't prove it at all, is that, and I don't know why you can't use Zoom, but my theory is the reason why we haven't seen the arrest footage is because the arrest footage proves to anyone with a brain that Luigi Mangione was detained by police officers, ordered to stand, put his hands on top of his head, be frisked, pat down, all these things without having been read his rights or told that he was under arrest. And that won't fly usually anywhere. So this is why I believe we haven't seen the videos for ourselves. It also explains in part to me, and this is pure speculation, why the feds are taking so long, why the case is taking so long to get their indictment. Because without a proper arrest, what do they have? They have to be able to make connections that Luigi was the shooter without that evidence, without a manifesto confessing to it, without the supposed murder weapon in his possession, which, by the way, I don't think it's ever been stated clearly that it is the actual weapon. It is a 3D printed gun. I don't know that they, other than them saying it's consistent with the gun that was used in the crime, I don't know that they've tied it directly. There's a lot of wordplay that can go on. It's consistent with the weapon. Does not mean it is the weapon. And you could ask yourself, well, why did Luigi have all these things on him if he wasn't the shooter? But then it also leads to the question, how do you feel about it if he was the shooter, but they didn't arrest him illegally, and all of that shit is illegal for them to have? Huge. I literally, I think somebody maybe came in and said, I think I'm overstating this. I don't know how I can overstate this. How can I overstate that? In our country, we have seen lots of people walk from crimes because they weren't read their Miranda rights. And regardless of how people feel, like, oh, come on, everybody knows that you have the right to remain silent. You still have to be read your Miranda rights. And all the time court cases come up with Did they read your Miranda rights? No. Well, then why are we here? Because you talked to officers and you gave information to officers before you were told you were under arrest and that anything you say from this point forward can be used against you in a court of law. You have to be told that. And it's too bad that people should know that. You have to be told that. So, where do we stand? How do you feel about this? This is the big news. This is the huge, I mean, I don't see how this is not enormous. Enormous. And the big question, like I said, is what happens to the federal case and the state of New York case if Luigi shouldn't have been extradited to New York in the first place because there wasn't grounds to arrest him in Altoona, Pennsylvania in the first place? They would have had to find another way to link Luigi Mangione, and it's huge. The entire case could fall apart on this one thing. But again, I'm a cynic. And the government wants Luigi Mangione so bad they can taste it. So I don't even think the government cares at this point whether they followed the law or not. They're going to get this guy. I don't have faith that the government's going to do the right thing and uphold laws in America. Well, shit. You know, we're a nation of laws. You got to obey the law. You broke the law by illegally detaining Luigi Mangione, so I guess let him go. They're not going to do that. I'm a cynic. They're not going to do that. So now they got to find another way to keep Luigi in jail, which is maybe why it's taking so long, because they can't do it on the basis of the arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania. I don't know that for sure. Again, this is the motion to suppress, essentially, that was filed today. I believe the date was today, February 24th, that Thomas Dickey filed this. And I haven't read it myself, but it appears that David Betris, who's an attorney and well-respected, had it on screen as a screenshot. It showed that he had an original copy, an original of the document, and was going through it line by line, reading it to us as much as he could get in a 10-minute video. So I don't know how he got it, but I don't doubt that he does have it. He wouldn't stake his reputation on faking it for hits. He's not into the views. So, how do we feel? Do you think that they will be able to suppress for his trial? But do you think they'll? I don't. That's what I'm saying. Like, this is the problem. There's a domino effect. If they didn't arrest him legally in the first place, you can't extradite him for the other crimes unless they've got some other way that they can get him. But then they still have to be able to prove that they had that before they arrested him. I don't know how they get away with this other than just flat out saying, we don't really care what the law is in this matter. It's too big of an issue. He's going down. Okay, I'm trying to read some comments. The government treats Lulu like they're his trophy. Yeah. They're holding him illegally. At this point, I would say they are holding him illegally. If it is true that his arrest and detention in the first place was illegal, then them holding him, continuing to hold him is illegal. They should have to, in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, they should have to release him from custody immediately and let him fight, if they're going to continue to fight the charges in court, as a free man. Because he was illegally detained and illegally arrested and illegally probably extradited, all based on an illegal arrest. And yeah, that's probably why Karen doesn't have the information. Now, I can't remember what it is Karen Agnifilo stated. I still have not been given, and I think she was talking about The Notebook, when she said, they're reading on HBO, she said, things from Discovery that have not been released to me yet. And then she corrected herself and says, well, technically, it was released to me this morning, but I haven't had time to look at it. Which again was, in my opinion, a fast one by the prosecution. They literally gave it to her moments before the trial so that they could say, oh yeah, she's had it. She's had it. She has it, so that she couldn't say, I still don't have it. They literally gave it to her that morning. So she made sure you were clear. Technically, I do have it. I just got it today. But they wanted to be able to have her not say, well, I still don't have it. Yeah, you do. We gave it to you this morning, about 5 minutes before we walked into court. So don't tell people you don't have it. You have it. Of course she doesn't have time to read it. And not only does she have to have time to read it, but she has to have time to digest it, to see, okay, I've read it once. What does it really say? What am I worried about? Where are my concerns? You can't do that in just a quick read over, even if she was given 5 minutes to read it. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? I mean, am I overblowing this? Am I making this a bigger deal than it is? I don't know how I could be, but am I? Somebody said, no, I'm not. Thank you. I don't think I am. But I mean, I wonder, like, does somebody think I'm just making this into a much bigger deal than it was? This is enormous. Enormous. Like, the whole entire trial, in essence, could domino effect be tossed out because of the illegal arrest. Again, as a cynic, I don't think the government can afford to let Luigi free, even if they did it illegally. So then what do you do? That's what I don't know, because I just can't see them going, oh, you know what? I guess we screwed up. Damn it. Those damn Altoona officers, if they had done things right, he'd still be in jail, but I guess we got to let him go. That would be maybe that would be the right thing to do, but do you really believe that they're going to do the right thing? There's no way. It doesn't even matter that it was a violation of his, and that's what bothers me. What do we do if the government tells you it doesn't matter that his civil liberties were violated, that his constitutional rights were violated, that it was a violation of Pennsylvania Constitution and the United States Constitution and the 4th Amendment and the 14th Amendment? All of that doesn't matter because we're not a nation of laws anymore. It doesn't matter. We know he did it, so he's going down. Are we going to get to that point? Or are they going to be like, well, if this is true, let him out immediately? I can't see that happening. But if you are a Luigi supporter, and I be careful how I say Luigi supporter. Luigi supporter doesn't necessarily mean that you think he's guilty and you want him to get free. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you think he's completely innocent and that he's being framed as an innocent man. It just means in one way or another, you have a feeling that Luigi Mangione should be free. Whether it's because he didn't do it, he was framed, or he did it and it was justifiable, whatever the case may be. If you're in the camp of supporting Luigi Mangione's right to a fair trial, it looks like he has been illegally arrested, searched, seized, and all of it should be out the window. But will you see that? And how will you react if they don't uphold the law and say that this was illegal and it's all out the window? Do we all just sit back and say, man, somebody should do something about this? I thought we were supposed to uphold the law. So I don't know. I mean, it left me stunned when I saw it. I was like, and it sucks because David Betrus, before his account got suspended, had a way bigger following. I can't remember what it was, but 15, 18,000 or something like that. And now it's like, I can't remember what it was, but it's a fraction of what it used to be, which means when he went live with that, a lot less people heard it, which is part of the reason why I wanted to say, Dave Betrus just came out with this video. Like, you got to go watch his video because the poor bastard has a small following now on his account, his main account. And this is enormous, enormous. Yeah, go back and follow Dave Betrus. Absolutely, go back and follow Dave Betrus. It's good for him. It was amazing that he broke that. Let's see if I can get some more comments. Dave Betrus' video came straight here. Needed to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for wanting to hear I wish I could hear Dave Betrus come in and talk about it. Like, oh my God, wouldn't that be so exciting? I got an invitation for a co-host. Let's see. Let's take a gamble. Don't get me kicked off here. Let's be careful. Hello.
Hi, hey. I think I just joined your live before just as a viewer before. But I actually have experience with on the other side of things as the family of a victim whose family member didn't get justice because of fruit of the poisonous tree.
Yeah.
It is very, very possible.
Yeah.
There's a case, McKinney versus the state, which is from North Carolina, where I'm from. My uncle, he was unalived in 2015, and the person who did it stuffed him in the trash can, put an "I did it" note on top of the trash can,
Right.
went on the lam, okay, locked the door. So when my family hadn't heard from my uncle in months, we thought he had had a diabetic coma. So we tried to have people open the door, do what they could to get in the house, the police in this case, because we didn't know what was going on. Somebody did a welfare check. Nobody answered the door, of course. The police didn't want to enter, so they had my dad go through a window. He finds the body, the note, everything. And what do you think the police did? They walked in right behind him with no search warrant.
Yeah.
So, so,
And
so,
yeah, go ahead.
so it was introduced as evidence, and they did the motion to suppress all of that. I remember this because it was a trial that was during spring break. So I went and my dad testified. It was a big thing. Again, it's
Yeah.
State versus McKinney. If you ever want to look this up, it was a crazy trial.
Yeah.
And like it was insane because he got a conviction, he got found guilty, and then on his second appeal they overturned it because appeals courts are a lot less politicized. They
Right.
really care about just constitutionality.
Right.
So the whole thing was overturned. The body was no longer evidence. The letter he wrote confessing was no longer evidence.
Well,
I mean, I don't see how it wouldn't be possible.
And to bring this back to the Luigi thing, what you're saying though is what I think is more likely the scenario, which is what I was saying. If the arrest was illegal in the first place, but I also believe the federal government is not going to give up on trying Luigi Mangione, regardless of whether it was illegal or not, then what's going to happen is exactly kind of what you said, I think, which is that the trial will proceed. After all that's done and the conviction is rendered one way or another, if it's guilty, they'll go back and do an appeal and say it never should have happened in the first place. And the criteria of the appeal is less than the original trial. In the meantime, Luigi Mangione spends significant portion of his life behind bars while they go through it and wait for the appeal process when it should have never happened in the first place.
Yeah, it took 8 years for the verdict to get overturned in appeals court.
Yeah.
So it is a possibility, if we're just being really skeptical about it. And again, I think that is why Karen really, really wants cameras on everything.
Sure.
She wants people to be able to see every step of the way. Because when you're sitting and listening to a case day in and day out, you do get emotional responses to things. Yeah. And I will tell you, even though we were the victims in the situation, the anger was really with the police. Yeah. Because it was so ridiculous. The whole situation was just so ridiculous. And it was looming over the entire trial because the whole basis was the body and the confession letter.
Yeah,
just with the gun and the notebook, the pew.
I want to add one more thing before I make sure that Lady Capulet has a chance. I invited Lady Capulet up. I think she was.
Hi. Sorry, I was yapping.
And before I have her talk, I want to say I just finished watching. I have a serious distrust for law enforcement. Although I think that there are plenty of great law enforcement. So I'm not trying to besmirch all law enforcement. In fact, there was a New York Police Department officer that supposedly said that they're rooting for Luigi behind the scenes. So I think that's kind of funny. They're people too. But the point being is that I was just watching the Gabby Petito special, one of the Gabby Petito specials on Netflix. And there was a moment in which they wanted to get into Brian Laundrie's parents' house, but they couldn't. And all of a sudden, this person calls and goes, I'm really worried that there might be somebody dead in that house, man. You should go check. Right. What gives them probable cause? And I told my wife, I said, the police set up that phone call. Like normal people don't call and go, man, I think I haven't seen my neighbor for a while. He might be dead, which is all the police need to go in without a warrant and because life's in danger kind of thing. So there's all kinds of shenanigans law enforcement will do. And you always argue at the end of the day whether that the ends justify the means or not. But Lady Capulet, I wanted to give you a chance. Are you there? I see you're muted. Did you want to say something? Because I know it's been forever. You've been holding your peace.
Hey everyone.
Hi, Joe.
Hi. Sorry that happened to your uncle. I'm going to be quick. I've had a really long day and I've been talking to a terrible client for like 8 hours and I'm fried. And
Yeah.
I missed the first 20 minutes. I'm unsure of the details that were released. It sounds exciting, but I just want to also say if anything illegal was done in the beginning of this, how crazy that law enforcement was most likely banking on this kid having zero money, zero connections, and certainly having no idea that he was going to become a literal icon. I mean, at that point, day 5, there was a smattering online of, oh my God, he's cute, and the memes and the stuff. They had zero idea what was about to happen, zero idea he's Ivy League. He has connections to huge wealth and is an impressive human being. And they were banking on him having a public defender who's
Well,
not going to have the money, who's not going to have the time, and who's not going to be able to have a team of forensics and all of these things that Luigi can pay for.
right. So it's ironic. I don't know the order in which they had it, but you have an interesting point because it came out, remember, that prior to visiting McDonald's, Luigi Mangione supposedly went to some hotel and was trying to check in early, but they told him that there wasn't a room available. And to kill time, he asked if he could stay in the lobby. All this stuff came out that
Right.
supposedly he did this, right? And he looks like a hobo. They said he kind of looked
Well,
like a,
there's the pain of it. So directly across the street from that Horseshoe Hotel
yes,
that he went in is a an entire veterans
yes.
campus. There's a veterans center. There's a veterans hospital. Who the hell is staying at the damn Horseshoe in Altoona over Christmas? Like, get a grip.
Well,
So of course he's going. And I personally think
yeah.
he spent that night outside. So he was disheveled. It was 21 degrees in Altoona. The kid was absolutely freezing. He was disheveled. He was probably just like, and they told him he could come back at 1. It was like 8:30. And he's
Right.
like, I'm just going to go and like hold a hash brown to warm my family, like just to
But,
warm
but
me up.
the reason I bring it up is to support your point that
Yes,
if they knew that, they're thinking this is a hobo nobody. He's a vet. Maybe he's living on the street. He's a bum. He's got no money. It's going to be
absolutely.
an
Because
easy sell.
honestly, most people that do these crimes are these little weird incel, no communities. They're locked in their little studio apartments or their basement apartments with no social life and none of these things. And they spiral. They had no idea who they were dealing with.
Right.
That could not only he fund his own defense without anyone else raising money, he's going to be getting gigantic donations privately that we're not even aware of from Penn alumni, Stanford alumni, all these massive communities, Gilman, and on top of it, that he's brilliant and that the public was just going to absolutely fall at his feet to the extent and be paying attention. There's a reason why 90 or 95% of these cases for federal schmurders are convicted. It's not because 95% of the people did it. It's because they're broke. How many of us have a million, let alone 10 million to stick up for ourselves?
Yeah.
Even if you sell your house and get your retirement plans done. That's all I wanted to say. I think so. If there was anything shady, they're just like, oh, nobody's going to know. Let's just keep pushing.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know how much they knew at the time. I mean, maybe it was clear that he looked a little disheveled that morning in the thing. I don't know if they knew about the visit at the Horseshoe Inn or whatever. I don't know that they knew about that even stopover at that point. But who knows?
Yeah, but nobody probably looked. I mean, he sort of did look disheveled, but
Right.
also it's just sort of the profile of someone who would have done this is not Ivy League affluent. like,
Ellie asked a question: was the fake ID on him or on the backpack? From what I understand, the false ID was handed to the officers probably when they asked for identification, and then they kept his ID and never gave it back to him. They were going through his backpack. So I believe that he handed them the false ID. The other question that comes in is some say that he told them he was Mark Rosario. I'm not sure if that's the case or if he just handed them the ID. And because later when they ask him what his name is, he apparently says Luigi Mangione. This leads to the whole question about, well, he lied at first and said Luigi. But the whole arrest is predicated on he handed an officer false identification because he really was Luigi and he told them he was Mark Rosario, or at least presented ID of Mark Rosario. But I don't believe it was in the backpack. I think it was probably handed to the officers when they were demanding that he answer who he is, and stand up, be patted down, put your hands on your head, but you're not under arrest, all that stuff.
Yeah,
and honestly, that's usually a ticket. Most people have had a fake ID. That's not usually in regular circumstances something that they really go after you for. But one of the things that really stuck out to me was the whole basis of the actual arrest and everything, and the details that someone from the Attorney General's office came in a few minutes into him being questioned.
Yes.
I believe that he was tracked, and they don't want to give up how. I really do. I just don't believe it was so many officers. All these people.
The Attorney General, someone from the Attorney General office showing up so fast tells you something. I want to answer a question because somebody asked, where's the motion? Can you post it? I cannot post it. I can tell you this. Dave Betris made a video about it. He's got a screenshot that shows the number. I've got it. Actually, I've got it. Do I have it written in my notes? Anyways, if you go to Pennsylvania's website for tracking case dockets, you can look for Dickey for the last name for the attorney. You can several ways you can find it, and you'll find the docket, and then you'll find the number of the omnibus pretrial hearing for relief is what it's called. However, all that I could see online was that it was submitted today. Dave Betris had an actual copy of the document that he was showing on his page and reading from. But I haven't seen the actual document. I've only seen that it is on the website and it's listed as filed today by his attorney, Thomas Dickey. And the number is there on the screen.
And we knew they were going to attempt to suppress this. If you take the backpack away, there's literally nothing. We've got the Jake Gyllenhaal face and the cab, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And and David is feeling good about it. He feels like there was enough there.
Yeah. I mean, David's not going to put his weight behind that if he doesn't think that's 100% legit. For the people who are asking me for the sources, I don't have it here at the moment on me. It's once we get off the live, I will promise you this. Well, maybe I shouldn't promise, but once we get off the live, if you haven't found it, I will post it on my website. I will post it somewhere. But again, it's only going to be a link to the Pennsylvania docket system, and I can get you a link to the actual page that shows that docket. Actually, I'll do you one better. LuigiMangioniInfo.com, which is the attorney's official site. There's a link on there towards the bottom of case dockets. If you click on that, it takes you right to the Pennsylvania website. It's even better. LuigiMangioniInfo.com, the official website of Luigi Mangione's attorneys. They link to the Pennsylvania case, which will take you right to the Pennsylvania docket number.
And this is why there's a website. Because of how important it is. And if none of us were paying attention and he looks the way he looks or not, this guy would be fried. Even if he was being framed, even if all of these things happened that were illegal in the beginning, this is what happens when there's not eyes on proceedings and in the courtroom. And
right.
It's kind of remarkable. And I bet they're so mad. They're so mad that everybody's like, and they're just bombarding mainstream media trying to paint everybody as these lunatics and,
Yeah.
And they're going to do that regardless. I saw a news outlet making fun of people on Reddit even for saying, oh, we need more men there. We need more men there so they don't think it's all women. They made fun of that. The basis is misogyny and discrimination like most things. Even with this, he fits the profile of someone who would be in their good graces. And because he's done this class traitor move, he's all of a sudden enemy number one. So you said, I do believe that they want his head on a swivel regardless. But there's so much public support and outpouring. I feel like if we ever get body cam footage, I feel like it would be over. I feel like there would be rioting in the streets. I know that sounds crazy, but I really do. And I feel like I knew from the beginning there was a reason why they did not release that. Police
Right.
these days love to release body cam footage. When they feel like you're wrong or something and they feel like they got it, they want to pat themselves on the back immediately.
With something like this, he was on the run for 5 days. That's actually embarrassing.
Right.
Like, yeah, the guy made a bunch of mistakes. Like, honey, if you just shaved the damn eyebrows, we wouldn't even be here right
Take
now.
off your mask in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Why would you be wearing a white surgical mask?
Let me add this. If like I was saying earlier, if Luigi had pushed past the 7 officers that were forming a human wall to keep him from going because he was free to leave, and if he had pushed past, I guarantee you they would have body slammed him, and that would have been all over the news. You would have seen Luigi fighting the cops and how they had to force him to the ground and put him in cuffs. You would have seen that all day long. But or maybe not that way, you're not going to see it.
Or maybe not, because they didn't want us to see any of it. Even if it went down smoothly, why didn't they want us to see any of it? He kind of embarrassed you guys. He did get out of Manhattan. I mean, it was embarrassing. Left. You chased some innocent dude for the first 3 days before you even got to him. So
I wish he would have went to Bali or something where there's no extradition. He could have wore his Bali shirt, had a little vacay.
I mean, why didn't he make it out here to the West Coast? What are you doing in Altoona? How did you make it 4 hours? It was 5 days. You went 4 hours, honey?
There's a lot we don't know yet, I think.
Right. I feel like he had so much fun planning everything that he didn't think about what was happening after, Yeah.
I just think there's more going on that's going to come out when the trial happens.
Or do you, this is a thing I want to ask you guys, because I feel like I can't ask these things on Reddit because people get so mad. They get very triggered about these things. Triggered, bang, bang,
Yeah.
Do you guys think that he planned in the Horseshoe Motel? He was so spent, feeling, guilt. I don't know. He could be feeling a lot of ways. He could be delirious, in a state of psychosis even, from no sleep and sleeping outside. Maybe he was over it.
I
wanted to end it in that motel room. That's what I think.
Yeah. Interesting.
Sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to dismiss your own thoughts because everybody should be able to have their own thoughts on those things. I think I have maintained the possibility, and I'm still not convinced otherwise, that there's more people involved than just Luigi Mangione. And that Luigi Mangione was intending to get picked up potentially. But I can't prove that. It's a theory. They have not disproven to me that there isn't more than one person involved, and that Luigi might have been involved in some way, but this might all be part of the game that they're playing because they knew that there was going to be problems and that they were going to be able to get away with this. Because I won't be surprised if Luigi has an airtight alibi for the time that they say that he was doing the shooting. I will not be surprised if that comes out.
And what about when he was missing too? Like that, I'm so interested in this case, in this trial. They need to paint a picture. If they're really, really saying that this is, with the federal charges, especially with him stalking and hunting the BT and all of that, I want to know about the planning. You better give me all of this that went into this, because you can't reasonably say that Brian was in fear of his life because of this person and he knew this person, which is a big part of those charges federally. So can you tell us about the planning? Can you tell us about where he was? I want it to be more concrete, and I feel like they don't have anything, which is why they don't have that indictment.
And Brian clearly wasn't afraid of his life, even if he was getting random threats prior to it. And I don't think those threats were connected to not only Luigi, but if it wasn't Luigi who pew-pewed, the actual pew-pew. I just think that United Healthcare has been sinning for the past 4 years that Brian was in office and has done egregious things to stockholders as well. And I mean, we're talking millions of people that could have been sending threats.
I want to address Brian Thompson's fear for his life thing a little bit, because it's something that I've never really commented this particular comment on. You recall that his wife was asked early if Brian Thompson had any enemies or whatever. And she indicated that Brian Thompson had been receiving some threats, and they asked her about what. And she said, well, I think it was about denials of claims or whatever. The reason I bring this up again is because during the last documentary by HBO, a former bodyguard of Brian Thompson was shocked that Brian Thompson didn't have bodyguards with him at that time, and that it was a huge lapse in security. And I didn't even really make the connection until you guys ran through it again. His wife said he was receiving death threats, or he was receiving threats, not necessarily threats, but he was receiving angry threats from people about denial of claims. So why wouldn't security have been higher? Why wouldn't he have had a guard on him at that time? Because he was supposedly, according to his wife, receiving threats from people who were angry about denials of claims. I'm just wondering about why his security wasn't there. I know that maybe it was just because it was a short walk across the street or whatever, but I don't know.
Exactly. And when he previously, it's not like it required threats for him to have security. In the first 2 days before Luigi was even arrested, there was a previous bodyguard that worked for Brian years ago before any threats. And that said he had up to 6 guards on him at all times. And he couldn't get over how bizarre it was. So 300 feet sidewalk to the event that morning didn't matter. He traveled with bodyguards. So it's even more bizarre that he didn't. Like, where were they?
So hear me out. Again, 100% speculation on my part. I can't prove any of this. But all those things you say leads to the possibility that he was set up, that his security was detached from him, that a phone call took place, he's on his way out, he doesn't have a security with him. All these things are put in place for a hit.
Thank you. That's what I think too. Why was he on the phone? Why did he cross the street at exactly the right time?
Right.
Peek out from beside the cars, between the cars, and then, do what he had to do, run off. It was just another day. It was another morning in New York City. Okay. So I just don't think that, one, you don't say you worked alone explicitly if you did. I mean, I've never seen anybody do that from all of my years of watching too much of these things. That was suspicious to anyone with half a brain. I feel like most people were suspicious of that opening line.
And there's a million people with motives in this. There's people who are angry at the denials of claims. There's people who are angry about him ripping off the fire pension fund and cashing out stocks before a Department of Justice investigation. There's all kinds of people who have motive to murder Brian Thompson.
There's all the stockholders that he's going to meet when he and the other two, the previous CEO and the current CEO, dumped all of their stocks after the data breach and screwed over everybody else that was shareholders. And now he's going to go present in front of those shareholders that they screwed over to the tune of millions of dollars. I mean, their stocks plummeted after that data breach. Who won?
Somebody has to pay for that.
Right. And so when people are just focusing on, well, Brian Thompson made $10 million, that's not a lot of money, and denial claims, the egregious behavior and the actual criminal way he ran that company goes so far beyond that. It's so deeper. And that's one of the things that mainstream media refuses to touch upon because they don't want to. Because it's so much better to just say he's denying claims because people don't care about sick and poor.
Here's another reason.
And it keeps people in a category.
Here's another reason why they don't want to touch it. I'm going to try to be on a minimal soapbox, but almost all of our mainstream media is in bed with pharmaceutical companies and healthcare companies that pay for advertising and support those channels. They are not going to besmirch the shareholders of United Healthcare on TV. So it's just bad business for their company. It's bad business for them to besmirch pharmaceutical companies who are in bed with the insurance companies. So they're not going to present something that makes it look like United Healthcare shareholders, stakeholders, the industry wanted to take out Brian Thompson because he cost them a bunch of money. They won't touch that with a 10-foot pole, or they'll lose their advertisers.
Presumably. Exactly. And they certainly don't want to touch upon the fact of who's lost the most money, United Healthcare, which is the U.S. government. Right. I've been saying that since day one. Nobody wants to talk about it. I'm 1,000% on board with the U.S. government. They have lost the most. They have now filed in the almost 4 years Brian was in office. They filed 5 Department of Justice investigations into them, from AI to the treatment of the elderly, to the stocks, to the two giant acquisitions and the monopoly they have been creating. I don't know. The largest victim as far as money is the US government.
Yeah.
And that was such a beautiful crime, honestly. It was poetic. The escaping to Central Park to get out of jail, all of it, the leaving the money in the park. I mean, it only just
I'm
went on
sorry, but
vacation
why
again
was
afterwards.
it? Why did he look hot before we knew he was hot?
Right.
Just step up to the curb. I am not lying when I'm telling you I stood up from my seat in front of my coworkers when it came up on the TV. And this is day one. This is the fourth. And the step up to the curb, and I was like, oh my God, that's so hot. I just was like, the smoothness. And we had no idea what we were about to like see.
Well, I want to, not that there's anything wrong with people being attracted to Luigi Mangione. Let me get that clear, but I want to back it up just a hair off the how hot he is thing.
Sorry. Inject a little.
And I want to talk a minute again about the U.S. government having a stake in this.
We can only keep it at bay for so long.
I get it. I sympathize with you, but I'm trying to.
I talked about the U.S. government, and then
Let's talk about the U.S. government. So I pointed out before, everybody was freaking out about how Luigi Mangione's last appearance, he had a bulletproof vest on. And I stated this is for his own protection, because one can argue that somebody is not going to want Luigi Mangione to testify, because he might blow the lid off of what really happened, or he might be a group of people, or it could have been the government itself that wanted to take out Brian Thompson for some reason, and someone's going to want to silence him before he goes to trial. So he's got a bulletproof vest on in part to protect him, because this is what happened to Lee Harvey Oswald, the lone gunman that now the government admits was not the lone gunman. They now are admitting that there was more than one shooter. After all these years, they're finally admitting he wasn't the lone gunman. But Jack Ruby, who had a sickness and a terminal illness, went up and shot him dead in front of the courthouse kind of thing. And we all watched it live. And so this kind of thing could happen to Luigi. If Luigi's only part of a bigger thing that is way up the ladder, then someone's going to want to shoot him, because then the trial will be done and we won't get to the bottom of it. If he's the only one who's responsible, according to the official story, and he's dead, then we have no trial and nothing gets revealed.
I agree. I have no problem with the bulletproof vest. It looked hot over Ralph Lauren, let's be real. I have a problem with keeping hands in shackles when he's trying to sign paperwork. Yeah. And I have problem with the odd behavior of the police and how they surround him, how they move about him with the constant hand on his chair, when the reports of his, since he's been in custody, have been he's a model prisoner. He's not doing anything wrong. You can literally in video hear him saying thank you when doors are being opened, because that's how he's been brought up. So it's just naturally coming out of him. The guy's doing nothing. Yeah. So the constant looming over his shoulders, I have a huge problem with. It's aggressive assertion to make him feel a certain way and to project an image.
And I want to say this. Let me give a nod to his hotness for a moment.
Oh my God! Yes.
Weird way. And that is this. I said from the very beginning that his cocky swagger and the way he looks at the camera and kind of nods like I see you, whatever. That motherfucker, he is money, right? And I'm thinking to myself, there's only two reasons why he's so cocky. Either he knows something we don't know, and he knows he's going to walk for this because he's playing a long game, and he knows that he's got a get out of jail free card of some get out of jail free Monopoly thing, or he just simply is okay with what he did, that he wants to be known as the guy who took down the health insurance industry kind of thing. Either way, there's a reason for that swagger, so.
And I love that. Like, I feel like that's what I feel like. Okay, with everything going on, politically, just all over the world now, okay? I feel like people really, really try to deduce it to like very, very small things, but I feel like the attraction is more so like something, I know it sounds crazy, but something to believe in about society. There's people who care. There's even male figures who care about the greater good instead of like egotistical gains in a way. Even though he has that swagger, I do think it's sometimes put on.
Yeah.
But I think that it's a means to an end because people need that. Seeing him on Friday, seeing him he looked really exhausted, defeated. I feel like I wanted to cry the first time I seen it. I was like, darn, you know? I feel like I feel like something about him is like an activist. Even from like reading his Reddit posts back in the day, talking to people about his back injuries, you can tell that care for people is really, really genuine. And I think that's really what people connect to besides the way he looks. I just feel like the wearing green. I thought that was the stupidest thing in the world. I was so annoyed on Reddit posts reading that. And then I saw him walk in green. I was like, oh, wow, he really fucks with us. Like, wow. and Karen, too. I'm like, wow, she's just so good with branding, like the website, the connection with, supporters, with the letters, even the funding. He could have been hoity about it. He could have got like donors. I mean, of course, he went and got $500,000. But, there's other ways. Yeah. Having it be a connected thing is also a risk because he's connecting himself to the cause that took BT out still. There's healthcare protesters outside.
Well, hey, ladies, I'm emotionally spent from today and the news and the preparing for this and delivering this message. And you may have seen, but I had a lot of passion and I'm getting red in the face. I'm just like fired up. So now all of a sudden I'm hitting this dump thing and I'm feeling like I want to kind of just wrap up for the night on these thoughts and put it to bed. If you guys want to continue alive without me, that's great. But I feel like at some point I have to kind of like decompress after a big like shocker news like this. So I'm getting to the point that I'm ready to wrap up. Do you guys have any last thoughts that you want to give for this live?
Nope, I'm good. I was going to agree with everything that you just said. What's your first name or thicker?
Marie.
It's brilliantly put. I think it was the perfect timing for Luigi. Absolutely perfect timing after a catastrophic election that many people feel like were stolen by oligarchs. And here comes this moment within weeks after that brought people together with a sense of unity that regardless of race, gender, social class, which are things that we have been taught to hate each other over, brought us together loving this person before we even knew who the person was. The timing was impeccable. And too bad for the cops. So if they screwed up in Pennsylvania, please 6-pound, 8-ounce baby Jesus.
So as my parting thought for the night, I want to remind everybody that I will have this live. It's recorded. It will be posted on my YouTube channel in about 2 hours after this live. I have a website, devilsadvocates.info, that'll also be linked on the main page. I also do a book review kind of thing on a book that Luigi allegedly recommended that I'm doing on my website. I got a lot going on. I recommend that you participate. I also want to encourage, the reason why I'm doing the book thing is I want to encourage us to have the bigger conversation, which is about class warfare, about the healthcare problem in America, about corporate greed. All of these things allegedly are, if Luigi did it, are the reasons why Luigi did it. And so we should be having those bigger conversations as well, not just how hot he is, although there's nothing wrong with him being attractive, but that makes him a good spokesman. But there's a bigger conversation to have. So I ask you all to think about these things, think about the how you want to change America, and can anything good come out of this whole situation? And I want to say with that, have a good night, everybody, and thank you for joining into the live.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Good night.